Hello fellow Guild Wars players and 3 or 4 subscribers that are watching. How has it been? I personally have been playing Guard for a pretty long time now, and I finally finished my own dungeon optimized Guardian build. Yes, something you probably haven't seen before. After all, Guardian is pretty versatile, and unlike the Warriors or Elementalists, building pure Zerkers is not always the most optimized thing to do for your party. So hereby I present you my own Guardian build. Hope you enjoy and pick up a thing or two. Have fun.
Celestial sucks.
Yeah, I can already imagine the angry faces when somebody mentions Celestials in PvE. But I guess you will be surprised at how many things you will be capable with this build. Not to say it's not open to your own interpretations. If you like to change a few things around and throw in some more Berserkers gear, you're free to go. This is just the full potential of all stats, while still keeping your damage as high as possible. So let's jump in the build and start out with the stats. Yeah, time to admire my celestial power. First, looking at the attack, that's over 2k attack damage, that's pretty good. A defense of 2.7k, health almost 20k, my precision is 50 and critical strike damage is almost 200%. My condi is also 620 and healing of 770. So all in all, there are really a lot of stats. Going over the equipment next, that is almost full Celestials. Starting out with my armor, it's only craftable with those daily charged crystals. The trinkets are also Celestials. And an exotic back piece, because I'm pretty cheap. The Berserkers greatsword, because I like the extra attack damage, so yeah, go Berserkers on that front. And a staff with some healing properties, because I only use the staff for buffing and maybe in some odd scenarios for some heals. And the next part is probably food. So yeah, a lot of people actually skip over the food, but don't forget, things like truffle steaks can still boost your damage, and it's only costing 2 silver at the moment, so you won't have to spend a lot of gold on that front. Also the potions, of course, in the dungeons, don't forget those. So the next thing are the traits, probably the most fun in my opinion. And this is where the builds get interesting. And my traits are probably also something you haven't seen before. So here I go first, 2 points in Zeal for Zealous Speed, which gives retaliation in an area, which triggers if you fall below 50%. But more important, the Fiery Wrath, which will give 10% damage increase to burning foes. And with this build, our foes will be burning almost constantly. 3 points in Radiance. So let's see, the first minor trait is Blindness. When you activate your Justice virtue, Blind Exposure, which will give 36 of vulnerability. And probably the next minor trait, the most important of them all, Renewed Justice, which will give our Virtue of Justice a renewal every time we kill a foe. So like you see, we have a lot of things that will be triggered when we activate it. Next is 2 points in Valor. First, Valorous Defense, and then Strange in Numbers, which will give 150 toughness to your entire party. Next, 6 points in Honor. First, Virtuous Precision, which will give us Perma Vigor, because we will be critting a lot. Then 20% less cooldown on our shouts, so we will be using 2 or 3 shouts Then Selfness Daring. The end of your end of dodge roll heals enemies. Yeah, heals allies. Perfect. So with our Perma Vigor we will be able to heal a lot and dodge a lot. Then Two-Handed Mastery, 20% cooldown on our two-handed skills, and because we're mainly using staff and two-hand sword, we're just profiting from the 20% overall. And then another 10% increase when we're not full endurance. So we will be dodging an awful lot, healing them, and triggering our 10% damage increase. And then the last trait here in the honor tree is Pure Voice. So we will be removing conditions every time we trigger a shout. And last but not least, of course, the Virtue. One of the most important Guardian skills. Inspire Virtues, which will give enormous boost to our virtues, but most importantly 3 stacks of might to our first Virtue of Justice. So let's take a look. Virtue of Justice will inflict burning for our entire team, deal out 3 stacks of might and blindness. And something that isn't even mentioned here is our other trait that we activate here. When we activate blindness, this is AoE overall, so AoE blindness. So we will act AoE blindness and 3 stacks of vulnerability, which is really powerful. And if you're just spamming this, it will really get insane. Another variation you might like to use with this trait setup is switching out strength in numbers here for retributive armor, yeah, this one, and that will give you increased precision based on your toughness. So in my case it will be around 5 or 6%, I guess. Then Two-Handed Mastery, if you're switching to a one-handed weapon, with Empowering Might, and this will give might stacks for your team every time you crit. And with 55% critical strike chance, well, it will be a lot of might stacks for my team as another bonus. So another good combo of weapons would be Sword and Focus. That also deals out 2 extra blinds. Maybe also think about Mace and Shield or Hammer if you're doing fractals and you need more defense. Going over these skills, like you see, I use 2 shouts, mainly as Condi cleansers, and it also gives some defense to my team. A Bane Signet, but you might want to switch this one out for a Wall of Reflection, Purging Flames, Hollowed Ground, or Save Yourself, depending on the situation you're in. Next, going over the weapon skills, starting out with your Greatsword, as this will be your main damage tool. Also give some reflection to your team and will be able to pull enemies closer to you. Then next the Staff. This will only be used to actually buff your team or pull enemies. But I found another use, which is mainly overlooked, and that's also the healing properties of the Staff. Like you see, while I'm on my Staff, I'm almost at 1k healing power, which is pretty nice. So when I'm in the middle of a battle, my teammates might get low, and I would like to buff them again, plus also bring out a lot of healing. With 2 dodges, that also brings another healing bonus. So empowering them, then maybe detonating an Orb of Light, and then switching back to my Greatswords. So while I'm on my Staff, I might also pop my Virtues and use my Renewed Focus. A Renewed Focus will take around 2 or 3 seconds to cast, and while I'm on my Staff I won't lose that much damage, and when it's done the weapon swap ability will be back and I'm back at my Greatsword, and almost no damage is lost. So this is a pretty nice trick you might like to use in dungeons. So all in all, that's pretty much the build done. It's powerful in its own, but it certainly shines at the dungeon parts where you're just cleaving through mobs one after another. You will be popping your Virtue of Justice constantly, protecting your team and empowering them. Just look at the scenario. Yeah, I don't need to say more, I guess. Yeah, I think the build turned out to be pretty good and useful in any situation. You still have parties that only want full Zerker Guardians, but it's really not always that useful or perfect. I got those parties with Zerker Guardians and others that didn't have any protection or good Condi cleanse, and it doesn't turn out too well. So here's the build. You might like to try it out and experiment with it, throw in some Zerker gear or damage if you're comfortable with it, and hope you enjoyed my guide. Now let's wait for ArenaNet to throw in some new stuff and hopefully impress us. Believe me, ArenaNet, we really don't need any more changes to the leveling system. Tell me if you want some more Guild Wars content, and see you on my channel or in the game. And I'm finally done with this.